He has the permission to talk to other teams. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, back to Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game.
I want so badly to disagree with you. I badly want to disagree with you.
You can. You're allowed to.
I know
if I can use your own parlance.
Well, I mean, I'm allowed to, and I'm fully willing to be wrong. I do it well.
Yeah.
So, sure, I'll disagree with you. Brandon's going to play for the Niners this year.
I hope. I wish I was wrong.
I do think there's a chance still.
I agree. We were doing our show thing, and we're doing our bibbity boppity and our show thread and our back and forth and all that.
Don't forget the boop.
As we were going through there, and I'm reading everything on Twitter, and I'm hearing Filipponi, who joined us from Pittsburgh yesterday, in my head, and all the rest of it. It just hit me on my drive in today. I think it's, to borrow from Guru, one of my favorite guruisms. It's a wrap, like Saran. And I think that it's a wrap. I do think that we've gone too far down the road. And I also think that the amount of distraction that this has become, and, Kyle Shanahan, I mentioned it yesterday. They practice today, tomorrow, Thursday, fly Friday. They play Saturday. He's now in a football mode. And if you're not ready to be a football player for Kyle Shanahan, I think he's over it. And I think John Lynch is cut from the same cloth.
I agree with you there. And I do think that's where this lies. When people want to sort of figure out the whole leverage game, and they're like, look, Brandon does have leverage because the Niners are doing this. I don't think the Niners are being leveraged into making a trade at all. I think the Niners are being annoyed into making a trade.
Agreed.
I think the 49ers have made their point to Brandon and his agent. And Brandon and his agent don't agree, and that's fine. But what the Niners, and in the end, this is on the Niners. This is their miscalculation. They had offers at the draft. They opted not to take them, and they opted not to take them, I would argue, because they thought, we'll get Brandon. We'll get him. We'll get him to figure it out, and if we don't get him to figure it out, he's playing on that fifth-year option, and we're okay for this year. That's what they assessed. I think that assessment has now changed. And I think you're right. I think getting people in pads and giving them helmets and being out there in the Santa Clara sun, and Kyle Shanahan looking at this and realizing that preparations are underway and you're less than 5 weeks away from a real football game with Aaron Rodgers coming to town, I think that he has assessed this as something now that is pushing in the wrong direction. And so Brandon still remains, in the end, powerless if the 49ers want him to be, but you start playing a clock game. Clock.
Exactly.
You start playing a clock game. You do, because what happens is you're like, well, we could run this out, and we could probably get into a power struggle with Brandon, and we could win. And he would probably play week 1. But, gosh, if we're going to go a different route, we better get somebody in here and start working on that right now, because what we don't want to do is do what we were doing last year, which was dealing with the roster during week 1 with the Nick Bosa situation. You don't want that. And this may start feeling like it's going to be that again.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that again.
No, and you also have the Trent Williams issue, and you and I think, are in agreement that one gets handled pretty quickly as we get deeper into August, and it's probably not going to be an issue, but it still could. We don't know that. We're just, reading it from the outside. But this Brandon Aiyuk situation has gone from, he wants to get paid and let's figure out the number, to, well, he still isn't getting paid. And now he's out there on TikTok and he's making noise and the Niners haven't budged. And then you get some reports that they haven't really had real substantial conversations since May.
Yeah.
And that's 3 months of, they say they don't want me.
Well, and Kyle said that. I don't know. What is substantive talk? What does that even mean?
That means your agent and Parag are in a room and it's like, let's get this done.
Let's try to move it. I'm
Right.
sure they've obviously talked. I think it's substantive when you check in 6 weeks later and they're like, nope, we haven't moved. That's substantive.
Yes,
that's
there is
information
substance to it. You're right.
I
but
hear
maybe
what you're
they
saying.
haven't even done that.
How about this? You ready for something fresh?
Sure.
Grant, did you say this on NFL Live? Training camp?
Training camp live on NFL Network.
Training camp live on NFL Network.
We got Fresh Network.
We got fresh Christian McCaffrey.
Oh.
I'd like everybody to take real close listen to what Christian McCaffrey says when he gets asked about Brandon Aiyuk. Okay? Whatever you're doing, if somebody's talking to you in the car, shh. Hang on a second. This won't take long. Pay close attention to how Christian McCaffrey refers to Brandon Aiyuk.
That's not part of my job. It's not part of my position. I think, obviously, as a former teammate or, teammate of his in general, any teammate that you have, you love, you respect them, you want the best for them.
Oh, whoops.
Wait, what?
Want to hear it again?
Yeah, because I wasn't sure if did he use the F word? Did you dump it? Because that's an F word, Grandy.
Hold
Totally.
on. Time out. Willard and Dibs. Christian is asked about the Brandon situation, and here's what he said.
That's not part of my job. It's not part of my position. I think, obviously, as a former teammate or, teammate of his in general, any teammate that you have, you love, you respect them, you want the best for them.
It's one of the best ers.
Yeah.
It's one of the best ers. Not Zach Ertz. It's one of the best ers I've ever heard. Listen to the As a former
That's not part of my job. It's not part of my position. I think, obviously, as a former teammate or, teammate of his in general, any teammate that you have, you love, you respect them, you want the best for them.
Dude, Michael Jackson from the Dead is like, that was a hell of a moonwalk, Christian. Woo!
He had no choice.
He was like, as a former any team, what? Teammate? Any teammate.
Teammate.
Current teammate. Somebody I knew. A guy I met at a party one time.
I'm in the huddle with him all the time. See you tomorrow. It's just a slip of the tongue.
Is it?
I don't know. Is
that the reality? Is the reality that Brandon is a former teammate and Christian just sort of like realized he wasn't supposed to say that yet? It's feeding your point.
Right. I mean, it feels like
Team Dibley, this is done.
Well, is it done? Because, you've got two teams that are reportedly in deep talks where they've got concrete offers that the Niners have kind of signed off on. And then you've got Pittsburgh saying, we're at the goal line. And, turns out they maybe weren't. But now the report out of Pittsburgh again today is that they're back in this thing. And then there's Washington kind of lurking as the dark horse, the outside candidate. But it feels like there are four teams buzzing around this idea of trading for Brandon Aiyuk.
Speaking of buzzing, man, dude, are any of the other NFL teams, are they having training camp too? Have you noticed?
I haven't noticed.
I mean, you go to NFL.com, NFL Network, NFL this, Pro Football Talk, NFL wherever. Does anybody talk about any other team? And I think that's what Kyle's probably sick of. Seriously. Give me your top 5 non-49er NFL storylines right now. Go ahead.
The non-Aiyuk NFL storylines?
Correct. What has happened so far in the NFL this offseason that is not 49er related?
Yeah, there have been a couple of contracts that have been signed.
I heard DJ Moore got some money.
Harrison Butker, the highest paid kicker in history.
And lots of people hate him now.
Patrick Mahomes, reportedly very fat.
And also very mad at the Raiders.
Okay.
Livid.
Yeah.
He's going to take it out on him this year.
I can't wait to see it.
He's going to beat him twice.
Jim Harbaugh is doing his kooky things, but to your point, there haven't been...
Nothing.
Not a lot of storylines out there.
Anything interesting happen in any of the other camps so far? Yeah. Oh, Malik Neighbors is in the middle of a scuffle at Giants-Lions.
Did you see that scuffle?
I did not. Is there a great video of it?
It got crazy, yeah. There was punches thrown.
Really?
A couple of haymakers,
and
yeah.
Neighbors, was it like he started it or he stopped it or he was just in it?
He was just in it.
I'm a big Malik Neighbors guy.
Yeah, he was in it. There was and I never understand that. Like, I get it, you're competing with your teammates, but some of these fights, it's like...
Well, this is a joint practice, though. This is the other team.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
This is, to me, nothing will ever compare of Aaron Donald throwing his helmet at a Bengal in practice and the NFL being like, not our domain. That's the Rams' domain.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Totally.
That's like assault with a deadly weapon, and the NFL's like, yeah, sorry, we don't know anything about it. We've got other stuff going on.
Just looking at NFL.com, of their 10 listed stories, 2 of them are about Brandon Aiyuk.
Mm-hmm.
Shanny, Aiyuk status unchanged. CMC has a hurt calf, by the way. And then Pat's Mayo mum on Aiyuk rumors. Channels Belichick.
No, but even the other headlines are like, I mean, what are we doing? The Vikings are content to wait on their GM and coach contracts.
Yawn.
Browns QB Deshaun Watson will sit out. Preseason opener. Bum, bum, bum.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing happening that's not 49er related. And I don't think Kyle Shanahan's into that at all.
No.
Yeah. Let's go to Leroy in Oakland. What's up, Leroy? Thank you for calling, man. What's happening?
Hey, nothing much. I'm sitting over here in Berkeley getting ready to get the best burrito in town over here at La Mission on University.
La Mission.
I'm just waiting for my burrito.
Okay,
yeah,
what's in the burrito? What's in the burrito?
Well,
I'm going to eat it.
I do the half and half. So I do the grilled chicken with the carne asada. And then no sour cream and a little guac, little cheese. I'm good.
Brother, you had me at no sour cream. You are my kind of people. Go ahead and talk some more.
Hey, I just want to know, ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that Brandon Aiyuk is better than Jaylen Waddle in Miami?
It's an interesting question. I think he's more accomplished than Jaylen Waddle. So if you're asking, like, is he worth more? My assessment on the open market would be yes. Beyond that, like from a straight talent standpoint, I do think that it's somewhat, based on their situation and what's going on around them. Brandon Aiyuk has this wonderful team around him. Jaylen Waddle gets the benefit of the fact that he's not even the best receiver on his own team and therefore is facing never, ever, ever double coverage. But that wasn't always the case for Jaylen. I think they're both fantastic. I'd put Aiyuk a little bit ahead of him. What would you say to that?
Yeah, probably right on par, if not a little bit ahead. And it just depends on what you want to look at, fantasy numbers versus actual football, because what Brandon Aiyuk has meant to this offense is probably more impactful than what Waddle's meant to Miami, just based on his blocking and the rest of it.
What do you think, Leroy?
I think Brandon Aiyuk is a little better. And I remember before Tyreek Hill got there, Jaylen Waddle was the guy. I mean, he's had over 100 receptions before Tyreek got there. And I asked that question because I'm looking at that, and I think Jaylen Waddle is getting a little more money than Aiyuk. And from that standpoint, I'm like, give Aiyuk a little more money than that. Now, I just want to say this. I think what's going on in the negotiating room between Aiyuk, his agent, and the 49ers is this, and what nobody hasn't brought up, is that there's a conflict of interest this way. Hey, look, I'm one of the top 10 receivers in the league, so I should be getting paid. I'm the best receiver on the team. I should be getting paid. And his agent is going, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. And the Niners are going, well, I'm looking at the numbers, and they're not as good as, say, the top 8-7 receivers in the league. And the agent is going, that's because he doesn't get the opportunities. Had he got the opportunity, had he got maybe 8 more balls thrown his way, he would have those numbers to get paid. Brandon Aiyuk can't win that argument.
Well, yeah.
And that's where it's in San Francisco's favor.
Yeah, Leroy, I think these are all really, that's a valid and solid way of breaking this whole thing down. The only part that trips me up in the conversation that everyone has about this is I don't think it's as simple as saying, what is Brandon worth? Like, here are the numbers. Here's what he's worth. Again, the example so many of us have gone back to is DeForest Buckner, the only homegrown player that the 49ers have not sort of re-signed and taken care of, somebody playing at a high level, that is. The 49ers did not think DeForest Buckner was not worth, $20 million a year or like a big number. They thought he was worth a big number. But he wanted a little bit more, and Kyle did a great job of explaining if we do that, if we give him what he's quote-unquote worth, here's the list of players we got to get rid of. That feels like money not well spent for us. They may have been wrong. it's not as simple to me as just DeForest and then Kinlaw. There's this whole host of other things that happen. And so even though they might have been wrong, that's the thing. Like, Waddle's new contract is worth $28.25 per year. That is his average AAV. His guaranteed at signing is almost $36 million. He got that contract. His season in 2022, very similar season to what Brandon had last year. He had over 1,350 yards. He averaged over 18 yards a catch. He had 8 scores. Jaylen's phenomenal. He's also running next to Tyreek Hill, though. How does that change things? We can look at Aiyuk and say, this is what you're worth, and it also at the same time can be not the right thing for the 49ers to give it to him.
Right, and that's the situation that they have found themselves, because what he's worth has gone up since March or since February when the Super Bowl was over, because the market changed and the market exploded, and so what he's worth relative to the market has gone up, and the team's ability to pay that has gone down because the team is looking at future contracts, not just Brock Purdy, but all the other players. And Kyle Shanahan said in the TK podcast about the DeForest Buckner deal, well, if they would have signed Buckner to what he wanted, that means no more Eric Armstead, no more Jimmy Ward, and, that's the way that was going to have to go. And so I do think if they sign Brandon Aiyuk to the number that he wants, it probably means goodbye to 2 or 3 other players, as you've mentioned, Mark, like some of your favorite 49ers. Well, they're going to be gone at the end of the year,
yep.
And Brandon Aiyuk will be around. So it's not as easy as giving him what the market indicates he's worth. And I think that conversation is way, way down the road now. Like, that conversation's already been had.
You'd think.
Brandon Aiyuk saying, this is what I'm worth, and the team saying, well, yeah, but this is what we're able to pay you. And I think that the difference between the two is so far that there hasn't been movement on either side. And that's why for 3 months now, there's been no real conversation, and we're sitting here on August 6th talking about trade options.
888-957-9570 on the Brandon Aiyuk situation with the 49ers. Only thing new on this calendar day, if you're just kind of getting to the radio for the first time, is that Adam Schefter tweeted that the Steelers are back in. Talks have been reignited.
Oh, yeah?
But other than that, it's still the Mayoka report from late yesterday that a trade framework is in place between the Browns and the Patriots, waiting on Brandon to sort of say, like, would you accept a new contract there? Would you accept a new contract over here? If not, they've sort of given – I saw someone say that they've sort of given Brandon basically like a faux no-trade clause. In other words, like, okay, trade in place, but you have to agree to a contract extension, and if you don't want to do that there, then fine. You can come back here and play for $14.1 million. Give you a little bit of power, give you a little wiggle room here. And I also think give the 49ers a little PR green check mark in their corner. And this is. I would remind everyone
because they could say that, hey, he wanted a trade. We went out there.
We traded you.
We found 2 different partners. Yeah, we traded you twice, and you said no to both. You vetoed both because you didn't want to sign there. So you want us to call every single team and find exactly the right fit. But that is PR-wise, you're right. The Niners do look better knowing that this is out there. But I also think that Pittsburgh is back in because that's where he wants to go. So if Pittsburgh's back in, if the Niners really want this done and they want to trade him, and if the New England and the Cleveland deals maybe aren't going to work because he doesn't really want to sign there, but he wants to go to Pittsburgh, maybe that's why Pittsburgh feels like they're back in, because if Brandon really wants to go there and they're going to pay him what he wants, well, then the Niners, it's in their best interest to work it out with Pittsburgh.
I mean, I guess, the 49ers are not going to do anything that just openly weakens them.
Sure.
They're not going to take a bad deal. They don't have to do that. And if we do take Kyle Shanahan at his word, and I'm not saying you have to, but if you do, Kyle repeatedly said today that his hope is still that this whole thing works out and that Brandon Aiyuk plays for the 49ers. You want to hear some Shanny?
Sure, but I do think that's also PR.
Well, I mean, I believe that.
I do, but it doesn't no good to say, this.
Of course. But you believe that, don't you?
Yes, because he's a really good football player.
like
and Kyle Shanahan likes to have really good football players on his offense.
If you could pick, and again, put timing into it. If you could pick any human being on the planet to be in that starting receiver spot for the 49ers this season, I get that some of you might be like, well, Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill.
I get it.
Okay, but
August
like,
6th.
Like, because it's August 6th, I'd argue on one hand, one of those fingers needs to be Brandon Aiyuk. And he might be the first one, just because he knows the system and he's been a willing blocker. Like, he's been a really fantastic player. So, of course, I believe him. They want him back.
Of course.
All right. Here's some Shanny. Does this need to be resolved quickly?
No, I mean, you always want it to be badly, but this stuff does take time. And, you know, every day I hope it gets resolved. But I have no timetable on it. Like, didn't surprise me coming into this, going about coaching our team, getting them ready for week 1, and hopefully it'll get resolved though sooner than later.
Is there a scenario where Brandon Aiyuk still signs an extension?
Is there a scenario where you do a long-term deal with him?
There's a scenario for everything, so I want to rule anything out.
And then what about this one? Any chance you're better off without him?
If you traded Brandon Aiyuk, could you see a scenario where you're better because of that?
I mean, Brandon's a great player, so it's real hard to be better when you lose a great player. So we got to look into anything. We got to understand the situation we're in, what that looks like, and that does take time. So hopefully it'll all work out best for him and best for us in the long run.
Is he disappointed it's reached this point?
It's been at this point for a little bit, so it's nothing really new to me. I mean, you're always disappointed when you can't keep a hold of all your players or it's not going exactly right. I mean, I don't like losing anybody, so that's why I'm hoping it does work out here. But right now, we don't have that solved yet, so I hope it does.
They mentioned May being the last time of those substantive talks that you talked about, Dibs. He was asked if that May offer is the final offer.
The offer you guys made in May a final offer, or is there a chance you...
I mean, I'm not getting any specifics with offers, contracts, trades, anything like that, but what I can tell you guys is nothing has changed. I know a lot was out yesterday and stuff, but from the situation that we're in with Brandon, nothing's changed.
What do you make of all that?
Nothing's changed. The first comment he made was, you always want to have this stuff handled quickly, badly. And he said badly. Like, you always want this done right away. You want it done badly. So I sense in Shanahan a certain amount of not desperation, but exasperation, where he said it. I'm trying to game plan here for week 1. And I don't know if he meant this Saturday against Tennessee, but he's probably focused on that as well. But week 1 against the Jets is now 34 days away. And so all his focus is on that. He wants it to all be on that. And yet he answered 5 questions right there about Brandon Aiyuk, contract status, contract offers, trade possibilities, all the rest of it. That's the last thing that he wants to be doing right now.
Which is why I don't get why it got here. How did it get here? Like, what? Honestly, now, if he's telling me that nothing's changed since May, then why are we still sitting here?
Because
why are you doing this during camp?
Because I think in May, Brandon and his representative came to the team with a number that was shocking to them.
Okay.
And it was a number that they were not willing to even really talk about. And there was no like, okay, we're at 24 and you're at 30, so let's meet at 27. And again, I'm throwing these numbers out just for conversation. So if they're at 24 and he comes in at 30 and they're like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? And he's like, I'm on Raw. I'm better than him, 30.
Yeah, but
that's to me where this came from.
But it doesn't explain why it's still here.
He ain't better than me.
I want to get into this coming up next. You know, the fact that this is happening now, what's your take on that, everyone? 888-957-9570. We're presented by Fremont Bank, celebrating 60 years of full-service banking with no compromises. It's Willard and Dibs.